Welcome back, folks. Episode number 5, Get a Grip on Life. On today's show, you're going to meet one of the people who inspired me to start this podcast. His name is Luke Sellars. And I met him about 3 or 4 years ago, and we started discussing. We just ended up always talking about really deep subjects. And I just felt like when I was talking to him, it's like, man, I need to talk to more people like Luke more often and get their perspective on life. He's super spiritual. He's an ontological coach. He helps people unpack some of their issues from the past. How did he get to this position where he is a spiritual guide for others? Well, he was an ex-NHL hockey player, and he was drafted in the first round. And his life kind of took a turn, and he had to himself unpack this and find this place of peace. And now he's spreading that message out to everybody. He's a real beautiful guy. So I hope you enjoy my show with Luke Sellars. It was very important for me. I really enjoyed it. He left like such a positive vibe in the studio after he left. It was so peaceful and awesome. So thank you, Luke, for coming on the show and sharing some time with me. And this episode of the podcast is brought to you by Get a Grip Studios. Go to getagripstudios.com. Have you ever thought about starting a podcast, doing some video content, getting your message out there? Huh? If you tried downloading those podcasting apps on your phone and putting them on the table and trying to do recording, and then you look at the podcast recorders, which one should you buy, and this sort of stuff, and how do you edit it? And you know what? I would say focus your time on your message. Focus your time on getting guests. Leave the rest to Get a Grip Studios, getagripstudios.com. Give us a call. Check out our website. You can start from as little as $200. All the way up to a full-blown bazooka blast at social media and all the RSS feeds, iTunes, Google Play, everything. We'll help you out with everything. So go to getagripstudios.com. But for right now, you have a special treat. It's Luke Sellars, episode number 5 of the Get a Grip on Life podcast. Welcome, Luke Sellars.
Thanks for having me, brother.
How are things?
Things are really good. Really good. Yeah, life's wonderful.
Good, man. I got you a little gift.
Oh, okay.
We talked about it before. And I was wondering why your picture is not on the cover of this book here. Conversations with the NHL's one-game wonders, my man.
Yeah. I should be in this as one of the biggest busts.
No, not the biggest busts.
They actually did a there was a poll or something done recently because I was a 30th overall draft pick, right?
Sure.
Yeah, so I was a guy who was touted to make a lot of money and play a lot of years in the NHL, but got mixed up with extracurricular activity.
How tough is that when you're 18, 19 years old?
For me, I couldn't handle it. A lot of guys can, right? Drinking obviously is in old school hockey was part of the game, right? And I was kind of in a transitional period where I played junior hockey in Ottawa. It was kind of that mentality. If you could walk, you played, and if you won, you drank.
Sure.
So it's a culture that they've gotten away from now. It's heavily focused now on health and exercise and working out and that type of thing. But it's there. It's everywhere, right? I mean, it's an addiction to excitement and stimulation. So you're on center stage, and then when you're off the ice, you're looking in an unconscious level for that same type of excitement and stimulation.
Yeah, you think about it, like a lot of times you'll hear like reports of, NHL players, at a party getting crazy or something happens or whatever this. And I think a lot of people forget that these kids are 18, 19, 20, 21 years old, and they forget what it was like to be a 21-year-old sometimes.
Oh, definitely. And what's beautiful now is a lot of the young guys that are representing the game are really good stand-up guys that they've got a team of people around them that are making sure that they're keeping their head on straight and not kind of swaying off the line, so to say, right? But it's tough. I mean, you're looking at pro sports. I mean, there's so much stimulation around you. Everybody wants a piece of you. Sure. I mean, and then you factor in being a red-blooded male and women.
Yeah, for sure. That's a huge thing too, man.
It's difficult. It is. And I was a guy that just couldn't handle it. I mean, it's nothing against the game. I mean, you see a lot of guys now. I mean, just recently we had Ray Emery pass away. A lot of guys that were fighters and that with concussion issues and that developing drug issues, and that was essentially what caused The diagnosis that I had with anxiety, depression, and ADHD in my mid-20s was a byproduct of concussions. And back then, they didn't know that could cause those, right?
For sure. You got your bell rung, man. Get back out there.
You know, no kidding, right? So that's a real tough thing to be sitting in a psychiatric office and being told that, well, you got this, and this wrong with you, and you got to take these pills, and if you don't, you're not going to be able to function in life, right? So that was kind of the foundation that got me to start looking into really who I was. I realized that I didn't know anything about life. I was a master at about 10% of my life, playing hockey, drinking beer, and chasing women.
Sure.
So it's and a lot of guys don't get the opportunity to really move beyond the game, right? They stay entrenched in it. They get into coaching afterwards, but they're always still living in the past in whatever that game was, right? Or whatever it was to them. And I'm fortunate that I was able to move through that and find peace and grace in my life.
Yeah, I always found that, you know, sometimes there's something about you that as soon as we met a couple years ago, I don't know when it was, 2, 3, 4 years ago, and, you know, immediately there was this sense of, you know, it's like some people, I don't think you can have peace without going through a struggle of some kind. You know, it's like with you, there was like this sense that you had gone through, carried a burden and some other things that really needed to be released, and everybody felt that from you, man. It was like a peaceful vibe. Yeah. And I don't think you could have got that without your struggle, though, at the same time.
Yeah, I think, you know, we live in duality, right? Polarity consciousness, and we need to know who we are not to know who we are. So I think suffering is part of coming to consciousness. And when we look at it in that way, we're grateful for those experiences. And that's really kind of the place that I got to. I stopped pointing the finger at everyone else in my life or the people that I thought had done me wrong, and started looking in the mirror, started having a conversation with that guy there that was looking back at me. And that's when things really, really started to open up.
What was the first time you did that, when you looked in the mirror and you said, you know what, Luke, what the hell's going on here? When was the first time you did that?
It was probably, I'm 37 now, would have been in about my mid to late 20s. I actually had realized that I really knew nothing about life, and I read a book called The Alcoholism and Addiction Cure, which is a holistic approach to well-being. And reading that book, realized that, you know, my addiction wasn't to alcohol and drugs, it was to excitement and stimulation. And I found myself about a week later sitting in front of a Guyanese doctor who looked at me and said,
"Whoa, hang on a second. Hang on a second.
Okay.
So that's so true, dude. Like, I don't think anybody goes out and parties for the alcohol and the hangover. Yeah. They go out because they want to have something new and exciting and whatever happened to them. That's a deep insight, man. And that book taught you that?
Yeah. And it was, and so I started to search and inquire into, you know, what life really was, and found myself in front of a Guyanese doctor at the Prometheum Institute downtown Toronto, and he looked at me and said, "Do you realize that you are a soul, not your physical body?" Oh, man. And that set me out on the last 10, 12 years of my life. I mean, it just blew my mind. I had no idea the ramifications of exactly what he was saying to me at that time, but it is that. It's these things that we identify with in our life. They're appearing and disappearing. It's a phenomena that's created through identities, and there's a witness that's watching all of that.
And is that, like, when you say your soul, like, you know, there's a Christian sense of the soul, you know, there's a Buddhist sense, there's different senses of this, that this body is merely a place where your soul is residing temporarily. Is that what you're talking about here?
Yeah, in the Eastern trainings in Tibetan practices and in Indian practices that I've been entrenched in now for the last 10 years, we look at things from the perspective that we are spirit, and spirit descended down upon this mind and this body, and this is a vehicle that we're embodying to be able to have a human experience here on planet Earth. And when you really start to go into the rules and regulations, so to say, of how life actually functions here, and you step into that flow completely, life really can take on a really beautiful, blissful existence. And just that existence, we live in a psychological way, right? So we're living in relationship to something else, as if there's two things, but there actually isn't two things. There's not even one thing. when we look at the things that are going on in our life and the happiness, the excitement, the sadness, and all these things, they're appearing and disappearing. We're never in that thing permanently, although we identify with that thing, sadness, happiness, when it is occurring in our life. But there's a witness to all of this. There's an untouched part of ourselves in the way the Indian gurus speak to it, the self or the true self that's observing all of this. And when we can retract back from the identification with these identities and these things that we've created to survive in this world, we slip into pure consciousness, which is what we are. And in that space, there's no suffering, because suffering is a product of the mind. It's a product of trying to get somewhere, trying to think that we aren't somewhere based upon something that we're gauging our relationship to.
There's real consequences, though, in life, and and obviously, you've your path has had some, and my path, everyone has consequences. How do you, when you're coaching people, how do you help them separate the emotions, the consequences, and withdraw back to that other soul? What do you coach them? How do you coach them on that? You know what I mean, right?
No, I know exactly.
You can do things that hurt people, and they can do things that hurt you, and those feelings are real.
Well, it's an interesting thing, right? It's the way in which we live is really not harmonious to breed peace into our lives. So people get so caught up in what's going on. We have 7 areas of life: physical, mental, spiritual, family, social, work, and money. And typically, your average human being is going to be centered in one or more areas. They're not going to be in complete balance. So the question I would always ask them is, well, if you're not balanced physically, but you're putting all this energy into your work, into your relationship, but your health is failing, then why is that not as important as the other areas of your life? So first and foremost, taking an audit to look at where you're actually functioning. I mean, if you can't measure something, it's very difficult to manage it, as you know, with what you do. So really looking at where the context of that person is coming at life from, as opposed to the things that are happening in their life. What is their relationship to those things?
Sure.
Right. So, and really, you can't help or hurt another human being. All we can do is create an environment for them to come to know and remember who they really are, because that's really, in my opinion, what our experience here on this planet is to remember who we really are. I mean, we've lost our way as a humanity here. We're caught up in fear and all these other. I mean, you turn the news on, and that's all you see is war and killings and these things. And in actuality,
it kind of fetishizes it a little bit, doesn't it? There's like a fetishness to it.
Oh, it's we love to suffer. Human beings love suffering.
Come on, man.
I had this conversation last week with a gentleman, and
human beings love to suffer.
Well, then why do we suffer then?
Because life is kind of about suffering in some ways.
It is, but it's a choice. It is a choice that we can that we don't have to live in that way. We don't have to suffer in the way that we do. One of the biggest issues that people have is they don't show up for themselves. Get up in the morning, and they've got 21 minutes to get in the shower, grab their coffee, and get to work, and they don't pay themselves first with their time. So how can you expect the world or the universe or whatever you want to call it, life, to pay you when you're not showing up for yourself? That's the biggest issue that people have, is they can't show up for themselves day in, day out. I call it the path to mastery. Right. We can have moments of waking up where we have these insights in that, but can you get up day in, day out and do the work when nobody's watching? And that's really when life starts to take on a really beautiful, beautiful resonance.
When you say resonance, what is it you mean by that? Is it like a flow state? Is it like a peacefulness? Is it a tranquility? What do you mean by the resonance?
Yeah, it's the best way I would attribute, if we bring it back to, say, sports, is being in that zone, right? As I'm sure that you can, I mean, in your life and what you've experienced in that with business, and that when you're there, you're in that flow. So that resonance is something where you're in your beingness. You're not trying to do all these different things. You're just there. You're showing up for yourself day in and day out. So then when you show up in work, in your relationships, and whatever it may be, you just show up. It's not, you don't have to think about, well, what am I going to say? What am I going to do? You're just there because you're centered in who you are, and you have a deep understanding of who you are.
So how does planning fit into that? You know, if you're saying that, okay, you're showing up, how does someone plan for their life? Is that important, or is it more of a you just following vibes and you're in?
I mean, goal setting and stuff like that is definitely a certain level of consciousness, I would say. You know, there's something beyond that, in my opinion, where you just completely let go and just allow life in. I mean, the suffering for the majority of the population exists in the fantasy that only one side of life exists. That only happiness exists, or
that is so true for America and Canada, dude.
Oh, it's and you see it, and you can't help but feel the utmost compassion for people, even the ones that you don't really get along with too well, because I mean, we're all here in this struggle together, but we're living in a fantasy that's projected upon us by, you know, social media and you know, TVs and all these different things, into thinking that only one side exists. It's when we accept life as it actually is, when we actually now have a foundation and a starting point to be able to live a life of peace.
Yeah, you know what? You look at sort of. I have four kids, so 3 daughters, and you know, my oldest daughter's into the social media now, and it's really not good for them. That, you know, we're really struggling with her to help her stay away from that, because all it is like, it's like an envy engine. How do you create envy in other people? How can they create envy in you? How can we want more stuff? And I'm not saying that's all social media is. There's a lot of great things that come from communicating and, you know, sharing ideas. You're on social media, you know, this sort of stuff. But I think sometimes it's like it's propagating an endless quest for more stuff, or more status, or more of something. And I think what you're saying is what you need is, what are you saying when it comes to that?
Well, it's interesting with social media, right? It's these things are done by design. So the way that the picture's painted and the way that it draws people in is always getting the population to see how this is benefiting us. But in actuality, I mean, listen, social media has its place, but it is an addiction for people. I read a study recently where they had 10 teenagers sitting at a table, and they sent a text message, and it went to one of the kids sitting there, and the other 9 kids had a brief moment of depression. In that moment,
did they have like fMRI machines on their heads?
They didn't. Yeah, they had all kinds of different sensors.
Sure.
But when those kids didn't receive that message, right, they had a brief moment of depression, which is crazy. And if you look at it, yes, it's brought the world closer together, but it's also made a much bigger playing field for what we compare ourselves to.
It also is tearing us apart in some ways.
That's what I mean, right? It's the comparison, keeping up with the Joneses, so to say.
It's also like this tribalism that exists in the world now. There's like, I've never seen, you know, so many people that have, you know, when you feel like a legitimate hate vibe from somebody, like not even towards you, but maybe they're talking about, you know, Barack Obama or Donald Trump or something, and they have just this vitriol that seems endless in depth, and then they can go on and hide behind a computer screen or a iPhone or whatever, and they can put out this garbage out to the world, and they never have to face anybody on the other side. They never have to sit across a table and see another human being and discuss the issues with them. I think that's really sad.
I would agree completely. We've lost our way in the sense of human connection. I mean, you look at our young people today. I mean, they can barely look another person in the eye or carry a conversation as you're speaking to, but can, you know, with what they're doing online and these types of things. I mean, it has its place. I think parenting is a really big part of this.
Sure.
I see a lot of the youth that I work with in meditation and assisting them to live more purposeful lives. You see a lot of parents that are really parenting their children with an iPad or an iPhone. You know, and I think that it comes back to that. And again, I think those parents are doing the best that they possibly can in a world that is so fast paced in the in Western civilization. It's very difficult to keep up with. But it all comes back to the home environment. I mean, I was raised with, you know, 2 really, really great parents. I mean, I swayed off my way for a little bit, but it always comes back to that foundation that was developed, and I think that's what's lacking the most. And then I mean, just the human connection, the heart connection. You and I sitting here right now, our heart's magnetic fields are connecting into one another. I mean, if I'm speaking to you from the other side of the world, it's still tapping into a degree, but and if you look at business now and corporations, a lot of stuff is going, you know, a lot of employees are working from home. They're not going into the office,
Yeah.
right? So what we need more of now than anything is a sense of community, and we're kind of going in the other direction because of technology.
Yeah, it's there's this myth that I remember I was watching a couple years ago. A couple things. One was a commercial where a guy was traveling the world and he was FaceTiming his daughter. And yes, I think that's great. But you're absolutely right. There's something totally different about picking your daughter up and holding her, or taking your son by the hand and walking with him or whatever, than there is with technology. But it's almost like you're there. But I think people fall trapped in a trap there. And the other one was, I saw a car commercial once where the kids were sitting in the back of the vehicle, and it was advertising that this vehicle had Wi-Fi in it. And the kids were kind of loud and crazy in the back. And then all of a sudden the kids had an iPad, headphones on, and the parents were smiling and relaxing. And I thought, that's exactly what you're talking about. Throw an iPad at them or something and they'll be quiet.
And it's, and essentially, and it makes sense. We get it. I mean, it's
tough to be a parent. I got 4 kids. Come on, man.
I don't have any. I God bless you and the parents that I mean, I couldn't imagine raising a child in the world today. And I'm entrenched in working with people to assist them to really live a very purposeful life. So it's a mess. This planet's a mess. There's just as much beauty as there is darkness, but in this part of the world, Toronto specifically, it's a mess. It's a difficult scenario that's taking place because people are living in their brains, right? And when you exist in the mind, you live in this dualistic way of relationship to life where you're here and that thing's there, and we're always comparing ourselves, and we don't have much heart-focused connections and relationships, even between parents and children.
Yeah, it's true. And it's tough for people, because it's hard to live in Toronto and have a reasonable level of standard of living and not have both parents out working 40, 50 hours a week. It's tough, dude.
Well, that's just it, right? It's the reality in which we're experiencing is both parents need to work.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Who's raising the children?
That's right.
I mean, it's daycare, school, these different things.
It's tough. It's tough.
It is. And if we look at the indigenous cultures and that in the way in which they live, I mean the Kogi tribe, which are way up in this Sierra Nevada mountains down in Colombia and heavily influential in a few of the schools that I teach through. Their children are on the nipple essentially for the first 9 months, 9 to 10, 11 months, and then put out into the community and grows up not knowing who their actual biological parents are, father and mother. But they've got 200 elders there. They're living on the earth with Mother Earth. They're in a community. They're uplifting one another. They're growing together. And that's the biggest thing that's missing here in Western civilization is that we're all kind of away in our little boxes doing our thing, and we don't have the support that we need. And we need support. Human beings need support. We need to work with one another. We can't do it on our own.
We've never been able to in human history.
Never.
But people have never been lonelier than they are now.
It's an interesting comment when you look at loneliness. It's actually an entry point into knowing oneself.
Huh.
If you, in the words of this great Indian master Shimuji, he says, well, if you're lonely, he says, go deep into that. Go spend 3, 4, 5 days by yourself without any stimulation. Go sit in nature for 3 or 4 days and discover who you really are. Remember who you really are. Stop all of the noise. Stop all of the stuff that's causing you to go in this direction and that direction, and just be there with yourself. And that's the hardest thing for a Westerner right now, is to just be there, because the mind is so blah, 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 blah. You got that inner roommate in there that's nonstop gnawing at you. We have about 70,000 thoughts a day. 95 to 98% were the same as yesterday, and 70% are negative. So this is how we unconsciously create the misery in which we live in.
Sure. It's self-created is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen the Lego movie?
I didn't. No, I haven't seen it.
Okay, so I have kids, so I watched the Lego movie.
Yeah.
And it's got this song in it, Everything is Awesome, and all. I don't know if you've heard that, right?
No.
So this one guy, he's alone. He lives alone in a Lego building, and he goes to work and he buys. It's basically what's hilarious about the Lego movie is a bunch of Danish guys who own a company sat down and parodied America to the nth degree, and just completely made fun of America. And he's got no friends, but everyone says hi to him, but he has no deep relationships with anybody. He spends all his time alone, and he finds that his life is meaningless. Right, that's the Lego movie story.
Okay,
and he ends up like meeting Batman and all this sort of stuff, but. The interesting part about it is it was a good parody. It was a true parody in some ways, because the reason why movies and things like that work and become successful is when they're demonstrating a truth, right? And so I think a lot of people are not doing what you're suggesting, which is okay. You're feeling a little bit lonely. I think they turn the TV on, or they get onto YouTube, or they start text messaging or Facebooking people. And then they go to sleep, and then the next day starts, and I think they're struggling with that, Luke.
We're robots. I mean, it's that simple. We distract ourselves. We're not living life. It was an interesting thing. I had somebody say to me recently that I'm suffering so much through because of my past and what's to come in the future. And in actuality, we're not suffering through the past and the future. We're suffering through the memory of the past and the imagination of the future.
I got to throw a theory at you here. You ready for this one?
Yeah.
Okay. I listened to a talk by a lady. I'm not going to remember her name. I'm so bad with the memory. But anyway, she did a talk on CBC, and what she was saying, she was a philosopher. So we're not talking about science here or anything like that. Okay, this is not provable by a double-blind survey or whatever. But what she said was that your brain is not designed to remember anything. There's no such thing as memory. She said your brain is designed to predict the future, right? So you have these experiences in your life, and then your brain learns that this is what happens when you do this. This is what happens when you do that. And so what you're doing is you're remembering the future. So if you touch the pan and it's on the stove, it's hot, this sort of thing, right? So your brain is actually a future predicting machine. And she made the point that she believed, and I'm not a psychologist. I just sell light bulbs every day. But the point that
very well too, from the looks of it.
The point that she made was that a lot of people are depressed because they know their future is going to be crap, and they don't have they don't have the thrust or whatever it is they need to change it. And so when they're feeling bad, and I'm not saying it's not chemical or whatever. I'm not here to criticize anything, right?
Of course.
What I'm saying is that a lot of people are really down because they know they're going home to the abusive spouse every night. They know that they're going to go to their crappy job the next day, and they can't or they know tomorrow they're going to continue to feel low self-esteem because they don't have this or that or the next thing. And they know this about themselves, and they're looking down the road to the future, and they can see that they haven't done anything to change the future. Mm-hmm. Do you agree with that kind of philosophy?
The way that I look at it, and I think it breaks it down quite simply, is we're either living in our brains or we're living in our hearts. And as so long as we're living in our brains, the way that the brain functions, the brain is stupid. It needs something to do. It needs something to attach onto. And the easiest thing for us to do is to distract ourselves from ourselves. We can try to fix the problems with the same way of thinking that created them, or we can leave that environment altogether. We can actually move inside of our bodies. Us as spirit can be in different locations. We've been raised in a way where we see time as being linear and life as being finite.
Okay.
Right. If you had been raised in the mountains of the Himalayas and watched Grandma and Grandpa float around and walk through walls and stuff since a young child, your belief patterns would be much different. And beliefs are all or nothing. It's like the story of Jesus walking on water, and Peter steps out of the boat and takes a few steps and walks on water, and one cell in his being looks up at him thinking, what do you can't do this, and he sinks into the water, right? So our belief patterns that are instilled upon us are done by a culture and a paradigm socially to keep us in this state of perpetual mediocrity and suffering. Right? It's done by design. I mean, look around. Turn social media on. You got 10 different guys telling you how to get 6-pack abs. Another guy, 10 other guys telling you how you can make $1 million overnight. Those guys have never actually done it. They're only making money on what they're trying to sell you. And then you factor in. I mean, even with music today, the hertz level and the vibration and the way that top 40 music is produced makes people angry. So everything is set up in a way to keep us obedient to the structure that keeps us really in a state of suffering.
How do we get here? Is there somebody planned this? Like, how did we get here? Because, people say, oh, life was bad or whatever in the past. And there's a lot of good things about life now. Modern medicine, antibiotics, I mean, a lot of things. But certainly there's an overwhelming sense that something's wrong with us in our spiritual sense. How do we get here, Luke?
It's an interesting question. It's we could go deep down that rabbit hole. To make it, I mean, as simple from the way that I see things, and again, it's my opinion. I see things as my truth, not as the truth. Yeah. And I think that's something to always keep in mind, that we see things as we are, not as they actually are. But there's powers that be that, I mean, don't want us to be living a life of joy, a life of bliss, a life of peace. I mean, we're very easily controlled when we're in a state of suffering. There was I think it was a psychologist, a psychiatrist, Maslow, and he had this hierarchy of needs. Basically, if a person doesn't have clothing, food, and shelter, they can't worry about anything else. And that's the majority of the population right now. Struggling to be able to put food on the table. I mean, you look at I mean, Western civilization, 95% of what your earnings are go to a cell phone bill, a TV, a car payment, these things. And there's not much quality of life because we are so fixated on trying to get somewhere else that we're never actually here. So we're always trying to get there, get here, get there. And we're never living life. So we're, as you had said with that, the lady had spoke about the way that the mind's functioning, which is really interesting. We're always imagining the future based upon the memory of the past, which is a mild state of insanity.
Especially if your past has been bad.
For sure.
Like, I mean, you're projecting that forward, right?
Well, the flip side of it is that even it's any experience in life can have a multitude of different expressions that come out of it. So a horrible past or a negative past can breed a very healthy, positive future. You look at so many people that have suffered and struggled in their lives, and it's allowed them to understand compassion and loving kindness. That's the biggest gift that I've acquired in my life is compassion for human beings. Based upon my suffering and my struggles, I'm incapable of looking in the eyes of another human being and passing judgment on them, because I mean, I was there in my life, right? And the problem is, though, is that so few people are able to exist in that space because we're trying to, I mean, get ahead in life, trying to get somewhere, but we're never there.
So you got to stop trying to get somewhere.
We just have to stop everything. Go sit in nature, breathe. Read a book, turn the TV off, go within yourself. I mean, you look even now and what's going on. I mean, we keep such a close eye on the United States because, I mean, it's everywhere you look. I mean, I don't have TV, so I don't really know that much what's going on, but it's always something dysfunctional. We're always at war with something. We're always fighting against something. What would happen if we just stopped? All of that stuff that we bring in, we walk into this room to have a conversation. What if all of those thoughts and those emotions you just left outside? And we both did that. What's left? If you leave all of those identities, who you are, owning your business, as a father, all these different things, if you left all of that outside, what's left? There's a witness there that's observing it all. And that witness, when you're in that's pure consciousness. There's no suffering there. There's no suffering there when you're not identifying with something that you think you are, and actually just being who it's beingness. It's the isness. It's an untouched, beautiful, blissful way in which we can live, and you're still able to function. Right? It's a very powerful place to come from because you're untouched by the physical reality, but you're there centered in it. So you're in this world, but you're not of this world.
That's some Christianity right there, buddy. But yeah, is that book bothering you, man?
No, not at all. Not at all. No, I'm thinking to myself, the one night only. I should have been in this book because
that's what I talked about it with you a couple years ago.
I know. I played one NHL game. It was thought to be the first of many. I'm looking forward to reading this because there's so many guys that I mean, if you look at the NHL today, I mean, you've got 100 guys in the minors that could take the position of
Sure.
guys that are up top, right? It's a dog eat dog world, and it's nasty. You're a number.
Sure.
That's all. You perform and they love
you're
you.
Out, yeah.
You don't, and I mean, and you're
sayonara, buddy.
Exactly right. So no, it's.
Let me ask you something. So, and this is me personally, but it just feels like it's the right time because I'm trying to leave some of this stuff outside, like you said. Like it's hard. You think about it's like, okay, all these identities, all these labels. It's like a label, right? You're a father. You're an entrepreneur, and like I like this label better than that label.
Yeah.
Right, and it's like this battle in your mind. So a couple years ago, I read or no, I didn't read it. I listened to a lecture by Jordan Peterson.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and he was
interesting dude.
Yeah, he really is.
Yeah.
And he was talking about anxiety. So I took his, and if somebody had come to me and said, "You're high anxiety," I would have said, "No way, man. I'm strong. I'm confident. I don't worry about nothing. I solve my own problems." And I took his personality test, and I found out that I actually am high anxiety. And I actually do worry about things a lot more than other people.
Yeah.
And it's something that when you're in that space, it's like there's two sides to a coin. One is creativity, the other is anxiety. Do you know what I'm saying? That I feel like that's what it is for me.
Yeah.
And if I could figure out a way to let go of that. So like I'll say something like I was worried that you didn't like the book. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Like not everybody would be like that. They give you the book and move on and da 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 da. But I'm like, I wonder if I hurt Luke by giving him that book, or you feel like this is what I go through, right?
Yeah.
And that's anxiety. That's what it is, right? It's thinking things are wrong. How do you deal with that, man? If you're going to coach somebody, what would you do?
Well,
I'm going to get a free session here.
We have a tendency to exist in certain ways. I mean, for yourself, you're very, very precise on details, but also very precise on how you treat people. So when you discuss what you just had brought up with this book, it's because you genuinely care. It's in you. I think any emotion is an energy. That's all it is. There's an energy behind it that can be switched. I mean, we can switch the energy. You can't stop energy. It just doesn't work that way. It's ever flowing. It's like the train going down the tracks. You switch the direction of it. So we need to work and learn practices and processes to incorporate and implement into our daily life that allow us to be aware of what's going on when these things start to come about within us. So we start to feel anxious, and we're working with ourselves daily in some form of daily practice. I mean, meditation is a very beautiful thing because it's essentially getting to know yourself and becoming friends with yourself. So when anxiety comes up, you're able to switch it to creativity. Because the energy behind that thing is attached onto the idea that you are not something. So the fact that you're anxious about whether I like this book or not, I mean, essentially is a relationship to something outside of yourself. When in actuality, that doesn't even exist. It's a phenomena. It's an illusion. This here's an illusion. Us sitting here, it
feels pretty real to me. But
it feels very real, right? Because consciousness is projecting itself through your scope and painted on this canvas that we call the physical reality. I suffered with anxiety in my life horribly. When you understand what
do you think about what you said to people? Do you go over conversations in your head after you left them, or what is it like for you when you feel anxious?
I don't anymore.
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't.
You beat it.
Yeah. I haven't had.
You just let it go. How did it go?
Yeah, I mean, I was. They put me on all kinds of medications and stuff and things like that, and that's what kind of got me into what I'm doing now. But I transcended it. I mean, I exactly what you said. Let it go, and we have the capability to let something go. Literally as quick as it came about. As sure as an emotion comes, it goes on its way. If you think about anxiety for a moment, when you feel anxious in your life, you think in that moment, you think that you are that thing, right? Anxiety is a horrible, debilitating. I mean, it cripples you.
Oh, it can cripple people.
It cripples you. I mean, when I would have anxiety attacks, I'd drive 2-3 hours out into the woods trying to get away from myself because I had this.
That's exactly what I do.
Yeah, I
get in my car and I drive around.
Yeah, I had this I would have this feeling inside of me that danger was about to occur. So I would try to get away from myself, but you can't get away because you're still inside, right? It's
yes. Yeah, it's inside you.
We need to train this system. We need to work with this system, this mind and this body, in a way that is very loving and very compassionate towards ourselves. People don't show up for themselves. If you don't show up for yourself, then the mind is going to do whatever it does.
So you're saying start with compassion for yourself and it will come out of you, something like that?
Well, yeah, it's a daily practice is what, I emphasize most of the people, and it's what's most difficult for them. So get up in the morning and spend the first hour of your day with yourself. Go sit in nature, read a book, close your eyes, breathe, anything. You do that for 30 days, I'd be interested to see if anxiety still exists in your life. Right?
You know what's interesting that you say that now? That's interesting that you say that, because I remember when I was training with Andrew Woods, and you were doing that thing with your bare feet on the mat, the connection to the grounding or whatever you're telling me.
Yeah.
And you said, walk barefoot when you walk your dog in the morning.
Yeah.
I remember you telling me that. You're like, do it. Instead of, I'm like, he's like, what's your routine? You're like, walk barefoot with your dog.
Mm-hmm.
And then, spend more time and just walk around barefoot. And actually, you know what? I'm just remembering it now. It actually there was something ceremonial to that sort of reduced, like it put things in perspective in a way or something.
It doesn't matter what your religion is. Our body comes from Mother Earth and goes back to her when we die. And she carries a negative, or not a negative, a negative frequency, but not in the sense of being negative, right? So we're positively charged. Mother Earth is negatively charged. That's what keeps us here on this planet.
Sure.
If you can shift the polarity of that electrical charge, that's how these monks levitate in that. And because of environmental stress, specifically man-made electricity, non-native electromagnetic field is what we call it, or inorganic electromagnetic field, what comes off of TVs, tablets, lighting and all these things, it causes the body to take on more of a positive charge, which causes the release of norepinephrine and cortisol, which is essentially that mild state of stress. You kick your shoes off, put your bare feet on the earth, and that charge comes down completely. I mean, I say this to people all the time. You had a rough day at work. What you want to do is go home and have a beer and a box of popcorn and watch whatever it is. Yeah. Go sit in nature for 15, 20 minutes. And then ask him the question, what was the problem? What was the issue? Right? So when we take time, when we take time to pay ourselves first with our time, then our whole being shows up for us.
Yes.
And the interesting thing is the world shows up for us too. Look at your business here. You're obviously done very, very well because of, going back to anxiety, you've turned it in creativity and these things, and you focus on a specific thing for a long enough time, and it creates something. Well, we can develop that within our own lives. When we stop focusing the light and projecting the light on what we are not and looking outside of ourselves to affirm who we are, and we go within, whatever that looks like, where it's just you're just there. You're there in the light of God, or whatever you'd like to call it, the light of spirit.
And none of that matters to you. You're talking about something that, you ever read that the Tao Te Ching, or the
Lao Tzu.
Lao Tzu.
Tao Te Ching. Yeah.
So he talks about the thing that the name of the Tao is not the name. The name, it can't. You can't name it. We can't name the way, because as soon as it has a name, it's not the way. You're kind of. I totally understand what you're saying with
you
this.
Can't touch it. You can't touch it. You think about the days in your life where you've been in that flow, where things are just working, and everybody's been there. Doesn't matter how horrible your life is, or I should say how horrible you perceive your life to be. We've all had those moments where we're there, and it's you can't touch it. You can't even describe it to people. You can try to, but you always fall short, because there's that isness there, that beingness, which is essentially who you really are. And when you're in that space, I mean, there's no suffering. Nothing, none of this stuff, like as you had said, the identities and the different hats that we wear. One of the biggest issues for people is they wear too many hats. Right? What would life look like if we just wore one hat? If you could just be you with everyone in your life. You don't have to be this way with that group of people, this way with these people, this way with these people. But it takes some time to be able to develop that and create that. And it takes a hell of a lot of courage to be able to show up for yourself in that way and say, hey, you know what? This is who I am. And I'm connected into my being. I love who I am because I'm showing up for myself daily. And then you present that to the world, and it's irrelevant what the outcome is.
I think a lot of people actually, they don't manifest their self-love. Like, I think everybody cares for themselves or loves themselves to a certain extent. Like, they don't want to be hurt or whatever. Maybe some people do. I mean, not to say that some people don't, but the average, guy walking around. But I don't think they actually think about that and say to themselves, hey, I need to care for myself. How am I going to care for anybody else if I don't care for myself? It's almost like unmanly to be like that.
No kidding, right? It's forgiveness, love, compassion, all these words that to most are light and fluffy, so to say. And I've had the privilege of working with a lot of executive men that have reached high levels of success but are lacking exactly that. And when the conversation comes up, you look at them and they look like a deer in the headlights because the world in which they exist in is all about competition and economic growth. We've lost our way. We need to get back into community. So
let me ask you. You're saying there was a time in humanity when we didn't have these problems.
Definitely. Before we moved into when we were hunters and gatherers, we took what we needed and we didn't have an abundance of anything. And then we moved into the agricultural age, and that's when things really started to separate more so, because people would have more, some would have less. It created all kinds of separation, theft, all these different things. So there was a time in which we existed, and existed is the big word there, because right now we're living in a psychological way. We're not actually existing. We're not here. We're always somewhere else, trying to get somewhere else. But there was a time when we, and you look at indigenous and cultures and that live close to the equator now, they live on the earth. You see a 300-400% reduction in major organ cancer, MS, Parkinson's, these types
of things. It's fascinating when they study those people, actually.
Oh,
it really is.
And I've had
no depression.
Nothing.
No heart disease.
Zero.
No anxiety.
Yeah.
No, not that they're perfect. They don't live perfect lives, but yeah, they don't have the Western health issues that we have. No skin problems.
Nothing.
No problems going to the bathroom.
Exactly. I know. And we look at ourselves here where we think we're so advanced. Right. One of the biggest issues of the ego or the survival mechanism is thinking that you're better and know more than everyone else. I mean, if you look at the way that the Western civilization functions, I spent a lot of time down in Costa Rica teaching meditation workshops and that down there. And I was having a conversation with a local there. His salary is 400 Canadian dollars a month. Right. I asked him, "How's your life?" He looks at me and said, "How could it not be good? Sun's shining, my body's moving, my family's healthy."
Sure.
Right? It's crazy because
you know what it is too. It's like and this is something that you're gonna identify with right away. One of the things I noticed, and my wife and I thankfully never got into this, and I credit my wife for it more than me, is competitive parenting. Have you seen it in hockey for sure?
Definitely.
You know, where my son, who's the best player in the team and all this kind of stuff, and they're comparing their kids, and they're almost projecting their own lives into their children's lives in a way. I think that's very unhealthy, man.
Very unhealthy. It's also known as helicopter parenting, right? It's where they're it's it's the structure in which is set up for us to be able to raise children is not ideal. In the way that we live here,
I totally agree with that.
We don't have the assistance, we don't have the community to help us in the way. I mean, obviously, there's few and far between those that do, but it's we're doing the best that we can as a humanity.
I have total compassion. I'm with you.
Yeah, but I completely agree with you. I think a lot of parents have children for the reason being that they're not aware of that inner child that exists within them. They don't have a sense of self. They don't have a sense of gratitude and love for who they are. I mean, we are such powerful, creative beings, but yet we don't believe in ourselves. I mean, you want to see a miracle? Look in the mirror. Watch yourself breathe for a minute.
Yeah,
sure. So I think it's and parents are doing the best that they possibly can.
Yeah, your heart's not going to stop.
Yeah,
it's going to keep beating while you're doing that.
Well, exactly.
How is that happening?
Exactly, right? I mean,
it's wink your eye. Look up at the world.
I know,
it's a miracle. It
really is a miracle. So parents are doing the best that they possibly can, and then we have to understand too that they're raising their children based upon what they didn't receive in their lives and what they did receive. Right. And living in this part of the world, I mean, you come back to minor hockey. I mean, parents are living vicariously through their children.
Yeah. It's tough to see. It's not all of them. But you see it.
But a huge majority of them.
When you know what it is? I think it's at the at some of the minor hockey levels, the lower levels, you see it more than I don't know. I saw it up as you go up a little bit less. But my son didn't want to play hockey at that level anymore, so he He went back to house league. Loves it.
Yeah, and loves it, right?
Yeah, he's
and that's what it's all about.
Yeah, he's like, Dad, I just want to play hockey 2 days a week.
And you know what? And what's the whole purpose of sport in a child's life?
Have fun, man.
Togetherness and have fun.
Yeah, man.
Not,
Exercise.
Not the competition and all this garbage that we.
They want to keep the score, but I mean,
Yeah.
just the he said to me, Dad, coaches, it's not the NHL, and I'm like, you're right, son, it's not.
Smart kid. You should have him on this show.
So let me ask you about the meditation. So
Okay.
I try to meditate. I don't meditate every day, but maybe I don't like even calling. I don't like to label it, actually. Sometimes I call it prayer. Sometimes I call it meditation, whatever. So I'm sitting there, and I found that a couple things. I read books on meditation, and some of them annoy me. Like I'll read a pamphlet or a book or a chapter, and it gets a little bit annoying about all instruction. I find that my best way to do it is to kind of try to turn off everything and then just follow my mind wherever it goes.
Yep.
Like a lot of people say, no, you got to not have any thoughts. But I don't like that. I like to let the thoughts, instead of forcing the thoughts, I like to let them come to me. Is that the wrong way to do it?
There's no wrong way to meditate. If you're taking time out of your day to disconnect from what's going on outside of you and going within, I mean, that there is what the essence of it is. We can get into different systems and ways in which we're meditating. I mean, with a board member and master teacher in the School of the Heart and School of Remembering here in North America, and we teach a certain system that guides you as spirit, who you really are. This mind and body is a vehicle that you've inhabited, and we can move within. When we're in the governing system of the mind, it's a very difficult thing because the mind needs something to do. It needs something to focus on. That's why in the more traditional Buddhist meditative practice, you focus on the breath. So you bring your attention to the breath and you watch it, and then the mind will go off somewhere to a thought. And then you remember, well, wait, I'm meditating, or I'm trying to, be in this space.
What I do right there when that happens, so that's where like the Buddhist style kind of breaks down for me.
Yep.
Where it's like I'm trying to do something, and I just let the thought go through and go away.
Yep. Perfect. Which is essentially a practice of mindfulness. So as a thought comes about, it can go on its way if we allow it to. What doesn't allow, if we have about 70,000 thoughts a day, and we have these, primary traumas that have taken place in our life that all of our emotional dysfunction and issues are connected back to, life can't flow through us because it gets stuck. We have these things. You think about if you're sitting having breakfast and the table beside you, you hear the name of an ex-girlfriend from 10 years earlier.
Sure.
And instantly you're knocked off for the whole day, right? Because the energy and the flow of life gets stuck because you have something in your energy and in your vibration that has an idea about something that's going on outside of you. So the practice in which you're speaking to is more of a mindful type meditative state, which is a beautiful thing, because to be there, you're essentially the observer. You're the witness. A thought comes up and you allow it to go on its way, as opposed to attaching onto it.
Or like trying not to think it or something
exactly,
like that.
Or trying to direct which is forceful.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
It's actually what you're doing is a process of self-inquiry. There's a great master, Sri Ramana Maharishi, who this was his way, was basically just completely retract from all, as we spoke to, those thoughts, those identities. We leave them outside, and then we come in open and not in the space of what's next or an anticipation of what's to come. Just there.
Yes.
You're just there. And you're just observing, you're witnessing, you're untouched by it all. So as those thoughts come about and go on their way, in fact, you're actually doing something in your meditation that takes a very long time for most to acquire. That state of beingness and just observing and allowing.
I don't know if I've got the state.
Yeah.
But I got the flow of the thoughts right, because that took me. I took a couple of your classes when you were at the club. Another question for you. And I don't know if you've ever experienced anything like this, and I don't know if I want to. I'm going to put it on the podcast. Who cares? So, I've done some power yoga.
Yep.
Okay, so not the lower, not the more stretchy kind, but the more strenuous. You're sweating. You're straining, and at the end of it, there's like a 10-minute quiet period. And I found that after I do that, and I lie down on the mat, and I have my head down, and I can really enter a real quiet place, and it's like what happens is, and people are gonna think I'm crazy, but you're the guy to ask, man. You're the guy to ask, okay? So I enter this like really quiet place, and my eyes are closed, and I can't hear anything else around me, and then all of a sudden I see these white flicks, and then I can enter that a little bit, like that. It's like a serenity or something there. Like I can almost in my hands, I can push away these things and go into that space. Mm-hmm. Is that real, or am I imagining that? What is that? What am I talking?
You're not imagining anything. In that space is who you really are. Imagine being able to go through your life always in that space.
Oof. It's so calm, dude.
Imagine how...
Like what I see emotions, like for example.
Yep.
So what'll happen is like I'll see, someone's like I'll see my own self, or I'll see jealousy, but it's not me, it's there, it's over there, and I can see it, and I can let it go this way or whatever. And usually it's just one emotion. Sometimes I don't get through that sort of haze or whatever into it, but I don't know how to describe what it is. It's like you're there, and it's very calm and peaceful, and then the guy turns on the lights and wakes everybody up. I'm like, don't do that now.
It's the isness, as we call it. You're there in your being. And in that state of beingness, there's nowhere to go, nothing to do.
Yes,
you don't have to be anybody.
Yes,
you're just there, and and that's the state in which that we can live our lives. And think about the power that comes through you, the presence, the purpose in that state. Imagine doing a business deal in that state. Imagine having a conversation.
I think sometimes in business deals I get into that state.
For sure you do. For sure you do.
Now that you say that, it's interesting. I think that sometimes when, there's a big deal and I'm nervous beforehand, and I just take a deep breath and, okay, go in and close this one, son.
Yeah.
And I go in and I'm super calm, and I try to pass on to the person that they're coming. Yep. If you spend money with me, everything's going to be all right. Yep. And I just that's interesting that you say that. But I guess it's like a different vibe when you're doing it that way, but it's the same force or energy.
Well, we've been fed a lie, so to say, in the rules of engagement and how life works. We live in this way where we think if we just do more stuff, that will allow us to have the experiences that we need, and then we will be happy. It's backwards. We need to be the vibration. We need to be that which we say we want in our lives, and that will cause us to do whatever it is out here in the world, and then we have this beautiful life for ourselves. It only comes with practice. Like, you sit in a sales meeting or you're closing a deal. You've been there. You've practiced. You've been in that scenario. You know what you're doing. You're flowing beautifully. You're not thinking about the sale. You're there with that person. And essentially at the end of that yoga class, it's the exact same thing. You're there with you. And if you're never there with you, how can you expect you to show up for you? It's like if you don't show up for your wife in your marriage, she's not there anymore. But yet we can't figure out why we're suffering from anxiety and depression and these things, but yet we haven't shown up for ourselves a day in our lives. Right?
Yeah, that's an interesting point, because what you're saying is, I totally understand what you're saying. I can see it now. The people you've helped. I met one that you told me about her, that she was struggling with illness and that over time. And I was talking to her, I don't know, maybe 6 months ago, and you came up, and everybody misses you, by the way.
Oh yeah, I miss them. Yeah,
yeah, everybody misses you. And she was saying, Luke really helped him. Like, how did he help you? Come on, what did he do? What did he do?
Yeah.
And she's like, no, he brought calmness, and a lot of my health issues were coming from, a lack of peace, whatever, what a word you want to give it. Tell me some other stories about some people you've helped and some people that have.
I've been fortunate in my life that my work is really my livelihood, and I work in Chinese medicine and Japanese medicine, and then also with Tibetan systems of meditation and Indian systems of Kriya Yoga and these things, and I've been fortunate to acquire a pretty good toolbox to be able to assist people, but it's never me helping them. It's just creating a scenario and an environment for them to allow themselves to heal. That's it. And the biggest, probably one of the greatest compliments that I get on a regular basis is that sitting with you, I can see that there's nobody there judging me. And that has only been acquired in my life because of the amount of suffering, the amount of, booze, coke, all this, ridiculous types of behaviors that created so much suffering in my life that allows me to be there present. We've had, so in the system I work with Herb Chote, we see so many miracles, it becomes normal. I mean, just in the last week or two, we had a woman with leukemia completely remedied, another one bone cancer gone, MS, Parkinson's. It's when you create an environment and provide the body with the necessary raw materials so that it can heal itself, so the stage is set properly, with the proper nutrition, and then you come in with the energy of the meditations and those types of things. People's lives change.
But you're not against Western medicine.
Not at all. I'm not against anything.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, I'm an advocate of anything that's going to help you to live a purposeful life. And I think that's one of the biggest.
Because a lot of people would accuse you of being, come on, Luke, what are you talking about with your hoity-toity?
Oh, for sure. Oh, for sure. It's
your little herbs and your,
and you know what? To be honest with you,
and your breathing and
and to be honest with you, dude, when I look back and who I was 10, 15 years ago, I knew nothing of this stuff. I was so far.
Would you have been that guy?
I was so far on the other side of the tracks. I was in the ditch.
So if you're looking Luke Sellars from 15 years ago, looking at you now.
Oh, this guy's a joke. Literally. I'd be looking at this, and that's, I'll tell you a funny story. When I went to, so I blew my knee out at 23 and was out of the game for a couple of years. And then I went over, got my career back up and running in Denmark, Copenhagen, Denmark. And the coach that we had there had us do an exercise. I was there maybe a week. Now, and you got to remember too, coming from North American hockey, it's dog eat dog. It's,
sure.
It's right. So
it's vicious.
We're sitting there in the locker room holding hands. And we have to, and so it started with one teammate who had to say something positive about another teammate, and then that teammate to somebody else. And my exact response when this started is, "You got to be effing kidding me! This isn't sports. This isn't hockey. It's about competition. It's about And then I find myself 5-6 years later doing the exact same stuff with people. So I get it. I see the skepticism in people because, but the thing is that if they just give themselves an opportunity to see themselves as who they really are, and it's not a teaching, it's a remembering. It's a remembering your true nature. Beautiful things start to occur in a person's life. You take 15, 20 minutes out of your day and sit in nature and breathe. Try to tell me that you don't feel good after that.
For sure, you can prove that scientifically. You don't even need to.
Heart Math Institute, last 30 years, Doc Childrey down in the U.S. there is scientifically shown what occurs when we meditate.
Meditation is 100%.
And I'm with you too with the label. I'm not a big fan of it. I'm not a big fan of spirituality as a label either. I call it in my life. I just call it well-being practice.
You have to call it something.
Yeah, you have to call it something. But it's. It's undeniable. Sure. If a person can actually give me 30 days of your time to do a couple practices or exercises daily and try to tell me that your life isn't functioning in a better way. Sure. Because when you're harmonized and you're balanced and you're in that state, your physical reality emanates it. It's a mirror looking back at you. Us sitting here talking to one another, as I look into your eyes, I'm looking into my own.
Sure.
It's a mirror back upon me. It's interesting. You bring up anxiety. Something that I struggled in my own life, and something that actually came up a little bit in the last 24 hours.
Really?
Right? Well, yeah, and very mildly, and then it gets affirmed through our conversation that, oh wait, I got to go in and look at that. I got to go. Yes, family. Yeah, definitely. I got to go in and look at the origin of where that's coming from. Life is
because you're nervous of coming on the podcast.
Right. Life is a mirror into ourselves. If we look at it that way,
life is a mirror into ourselves. Life is a mirror into ourselves. So when we're looking out at it, what are we looking at?
Well, it's probably best said by Hermes in Greek mythology, as above, so below. And what he meant by that is what's up there is inside of you. And he also said something interesting, as within, so without. So what is inside of you is outside of you. When we live in a way where we look to the world to affirm who we are, which is the consistent kind of expression or way of living of a Westerner, we're living in contraction. We're looking to things in our life and trying to bring that in to create something inside of us, happiness, whatever we want to call it. It's contraction. It's fear. When we go within and now we expand from that place, now we're in a space of expansion. We're in a space of love. From that place, anything is possible. Anything. any mental issue, any this, that, doesn't matter what it is. Anything is possible when we show up for ourselves above all else, which is difficult for a parent. You got 4 kids. I mean, they're the center of your universe. But the question I always ask parents is, I call it healthy priorities. If your kids need 40%, work needs 40%, your wife needs 20, what's left for you? You're tired, you don't sleep well, physically overweight, not eating well, all these different things. What would life look like if you were actually willing to allow all of that to disappear? If you were allowing life to flow through you, if you're allowing it to show up for you as opposed to trying to control what it looks like.
Wow. Can I throw a biblical story at you?
Yeah,
See what you think? So the story of Job, you know it, right?
Yep.
The devil and God get together and they say, devil says to God, you see that guy down there? I can make him curse you and curse his existence in the world if I just do all this sort of stuff. And God gives him the permission to basically torture Job. And all people say, oh, the Bible's so crazy. Look, it's a story, dude. Nobody witnessed God and the devil talking, okay? It's a story to stuff. And he suffers and suffers and suffers and suffers and suffers and suffers. And then he transcends his suffering. Is that the message, that you can transcend it in some way? Or are you giving a different message?
Well, I guess the question would
like, are you transcending your suffering or are you accepting your suffering? Which one is it?
I think through the acceptance you transcend it. Well, you think about a problem in your life, right? If you keep going back at that problem, it continues to exist in your life. I mean, look at war on this planet. War doesn't end war. Love does.
Sure.
Understanding. So if you accept life as it is, does that not transcend the issue? As opposed to trying to force it to be what you think it should be. And the beautiful thing about life is it's so gracious. It always gives us what we need, never what we want.
You know, it's so crazy how in the West, in Canada, and United States, and Western Europe, and that nobody's really hungry, dude.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're probably hungry for peacefulness or spirituality, but they're not hungry for food, say.
Yep.
They are not cold. Like there are poor people, don't get me wrong,
Yep.
but there are a lot more poor people in other places in the world. Yet we're so tortured inside.
Well, we're in spiritual poverty. I mean, if you look at the Eastern world, more financial poverty. It's the polarity of the planet. Everything is always in perfect balance. And that's what we're experiencing now in this part of the world is spiritual poverty. We're experiencing a reality that everything is being done by design to keep us away from ourselves.
Everything is being done by design, but who's doing it?
Good question. I mean, that's a can of worms that we could sit here for the next week discussing. But through my experiences, and this isn't getting into conspiracy stuff and all that stuff.
That's
I mean,
not your style.
No, it's not. I mean, I think anything that we feed emotion into or feed energy into, we help to sustain its existence. That's why I really.
It's like when they talk about Donald Trump so much on the news.
Yeah.
They're like feeding his.
Oh, exactly.
They're feeding him.
Just the nature of turning the news on and watching, all the stuff that's happening in the world that is all fear-based on the TV.
There's literally something in psychology called a cascade effect.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And a cascade effect is when you mention when you talk about something so much that whether what you hear about it is negative or positive, you come to agree with it.
Yes.
Because you just hear about it so much.
You hear it exactly, right?
Like Donald Trump got so much press in his election run that he won.
Yeah.
Like they just gave him so much press.
Yeah. No.
It's a cascade. It's called the cascade. I think it's a cascade effect or something like that. It's cascade is the first word.
Yeah, it's. I've actually done exercises with people where I've had them sit there and watch, children being born, not coming out of. I mean, but watching children being brought into this world, people loving one another and all this stuff with people that are heavily depressed, 15, 20 minutes of that. And I asked them the question. I said, what was the problem? How are you feeling now? and you see it in their eyes. Their mind comes in and tries to figure out how they're still suffering because, as we had said earlier, I really believe that people love to suffer.
It makes them feel alive.
It does.
Yes.
Because we're addicted.
Yes.
We're addicted to inhibition.
Yes, it's the same reason why you're talking about people drink, because they're chasing some sort of excitement. Or
well, exactly, right?
Yes.
We're addicted to inhibition. We're addicted to anything that makes us feel different than what we normally feel, because we're not okay to just be there with ourselves. So we're always looking to something, looking to this, looking to that, and that's wherein lies the suffering. In fact, people are looking outside of themselves for the answer. And I'm looking at them as the answer.
Yeah, that's true.
And the issues that they're dealing with that they
Yes.
think are so important,
Yes.
that's not it. It's not it. The things that we think are our problems and the things that we identify with, it's not that. There is an essence and a beauty, a witness to all of this that's there, untouched by it all. But when we put our energy and shine the light on that which we are not, of course it's going to flourish in our lives. So now we experience a life of that which we are not. The interesting thing about it is that we need to know ourselves as that which we are not to know ourselves as that which we are.
We need to know ourselves as that which we are not.
To know ourselves as that which we are.
Unpack that a little for me.
Yeah, so if I ask you right now, you feel good?
Yeah, I feel good.
How do you know you feel good?
Because I'm not thinking about how I feel.
Okay.
How's that?
Okay. Yeah. Good, really good answer. But you feel the way that you feel now, or you know that the way that you feel because you know what it is to feel not that.
Yes.
Right. So
So I don't feel the anxiety. I don't feel
exactly.
the jealousy, the envy, or whatever.
Exactly. So if you're happy now, you know you're happy because you know you're not sad. Living in polarity or duality, which is the way that things function on this planet, we need to know where we are not to know where we are. And this is the great illusion that most people are experiencing in their life, is that as though there's two things, that I'm here and you're there, when in actuality there is no two things. There's not even one thing. There's just consciousness, and we project it on this canvas that we call our reality, based upon the way in which we see ourselves, which is connected to our traumas, our issues, all these things. I mean, we can get into discussing previous lifetimes and that, which again opens up a can of worms, and that can go off and
You start to lose people with that.
Yeah,
kind of stuff,
exactly.
Right?
And
It's
I'm
not necessary.
Yeah, right. But the simple truth of it is just, you know where you are now because you know you're not somewhere else. What if you were able to exist in your life where there was never anywhere to go? Nothing to do, no one to try to be other than just you. You're centered there in your beingness, is the way that we speak to it.
I think if everyone did that, a lot of hatred would evaporate.
Instantly.
Instantly
it would evaporate.
Yeah, people would begin to project compassion, the right kind of compassion.
Yeah.
Not like a pity.
Exactly.
Or whatever it is. They would project that out, and people would be attracted to it.
Well, and that's a big thing that we're experiencing on the planet right now is a lot of communities popping up, as you just said, that with this kind of relationship to helping and assisting one another, where they're not showing up for themselves, so they're showing up for everybody else to try to fill that void, if that makes sense. But it all still comes back to the same thing, the fundamentals. What are the primary instinctual behaviors that you as a human being have within you, that if you don't take care of these things, you're not here? Eating, sleeping, and all these done consciously, not unconsciously.
Not passing out.
Yeah, right? Eating, sleeping, movement, the expression and reception of love, reproduction, these primary instinctual behaviors, and the majority of the population are not adhering to them. So what do we develop? Secondary instinctual behaviors, which is the eating too much, drinking, watching TV, social media, all these different things. If we take a step back, and for me it's simple because I'm a male, obviously, so analytical and logical is the dominant way in which is the way in which I function, right? It's if take a step back and look at your life and work with the fundamentals. Do these things that are necessary. Do it for the next month. And then come back to me and say, okay, is there anxiety anymore? Are there these issues existing
Eat
there?
Healthy food, get a good night's sleep.
Yeah, the things that
spend some time in nature.
Exactly. Like it's the things that we are not doing as a population, and we don't need to overcomplicate it.
So okay, you can help individuals. What is there any hope for because you're helping, you're spreading, your message. It's your message.
For sure.
It's coming from your heart.
Yeah.
Right? You're spreading your message. As a society, we're so divided. There's so many different positions people are taking. And I hear them. I sympathize from where they're coming from. And actually, I'm doing a podcast after this with someone else where I'm a little bit really excited about, but I'm also nervous about. But there's so many people that there's like some tribalism going on or something, and they want to join a tribe that's against another part of our society.
Yep.
And how do you, like, that's a big problem. How do we fix that sort of thing as a society-wide?
Yeah, I mean, again, it comes back to the same thing that we as human beings need to be at war with something. The fight against this, the fight against that,
war on drugs.
Yeah, war on drugs. You're talking about Western medical practice. I mean, it's in the natural practice.
War on cancer.
Well, that's just it. In the natural practices here, I mean,
cancer is a war.
Well, that's just it. If we make it one.
No, but cancer, like, that's what it's a manifestation of an internal war with your body.
Oh, that's exactly it. Your body trying to kill a part of you,
Yeah.
which is because there's a deep-rooted emotion that's existing in there that we're not working with, or multitude of emotions. So, and again, it comes back to the separation, the observation that I am here and you are there, and I need to get somewhere. So you need to move. I need to improve my life by fighting against this or fighting against that, as opposed to just allowing it all to happen, accepting it as it is. You know, we don't need to overcomplicate things. We don't need to go deep into the story that we're playing out as our life. That's based upon all of the things that we've experienced. We just need to slow down, stop, and just observe. Right? If you're confused because you've had a rough day at work, don't go out and drink beer and eat chicken wings because your decisions in that moment are confused at its best merit. Stop. Just stop and connect into who you really are. Connect into that space within you, that untouched space that isn't it just isn't touched by the thoughts and the identities and the things that are going on. But just to get to that space is so difficult for people because there's so many options out there to distract yourself from your suffering. Right? I mean, we suppress our suffering, our sadness, these things, when in actuality, when the emotion of, let's say, anxiety comes up, that's a beautiful gift and opportunity for you to understand its origin. How can you understand where anxiety comes from unless it's present in your life? And through the process of understanding where it comes from.
So what do you accept that and dive into it, or do you release it, or what?
Yeah. In the practices that I work with, heavily Tibetan systems, in all religions, at the foundation of them are mystic schools, mystery schools. The school of the heart, which we represent, is a mystic school. So underlying all of the stuff that's come out,
the dogma,
all that. There's this aspect to things that is truth in the way that
it's in all the religions, like Sufi, Islam.
Sufis, the Sufis, right? You look at all of them, right?
Christianity is very mystical.
Exactly. I mean, you look at the
you talk about like transubstantiation, rising from the dead, all this kind of stuff. It's very, very mystical.
I mean, you look at, in the Orthodox Christianity, Mount Athos, the monks there chanting all day long, in Tibet chanting all day long.
Yeah, sure.
The practical application of spirit, as opposed to bundling it up and trying to sell it. Right. So we get into a practice. We are inundated with theory in this part of the world. Knowledge. I know this. I know that. I know more than you. One of the greatest things that was ever told to me was, live your life in a way where you want to know what everyone else knows, not what you know. And I look in the mirror every morning and I say to myself, today will be the day that everything I think I know will be proven wrong, and I want to know what everyone else in this planet knows. And then I go out and I start the day. So as opposed to me trying to project who I think I am, the interesting thing is...
That's interesting. You're doing the opposite.
Yeah, the interesting thing is, and since I've been living in this way, people are showing up wanting to hear what I have to say.
Welcome to the Get a Grip.
I still shake my head at times because I see people coming in that are way more put together, and it's like, no. So you
know what it is though. Okay? So I'm going to tell you this. You may get actually you're not going to care, but so I'm a Catholic.
Yeah.
I've known really, really awesome, cool priests in my life.
Yeah.
Super, like I always say that they have that whatever Jesus' spirit was, they have it. The peacefulness, the non-judgmentalness, the caring, the compassion. You remind me of them, dude.
Yeah.
You have that peacefulness.
Oh, thank you. No, I
appreciate.
Yeah,
dude, you really do.
No, I appreciate you saying that, and it's no, I really value our friendship and really have a lot of respect for you. So coming from you, it means a lot to me, and and it's been a lot of work to get to that place. And
it's a journey. Yeah.
It's been and it's for me it's 2-3 hours every morning. I get up at 3-4 a.m. and spend the first 2-3 hours of my day in nature, meditating, reading these different things, and the outcome of that is a peaceful life. Right, so we don't need to overcomplicate how we achieve a peaceful life. We got to just show up and start doing something.
But is it less intensity? Is that what you're talking about for people? Like, don't chase intensity, chase peace, or don't chase anything.
Yeah, don't chase anything. Just open your mind and your heart and allow life to flow into you. Which I know that, okay, well, how do we actually attain that? Well, that's where we get into different practices and systems that make sense to you, because you know yourself better than anybody. Anybody who's going to tell you that they know what's best for you, run in the other direction. We need to empower ourselves and start listening to that inner voice. But to be able to do so, we need to first have balance in our life, so that inner roommate within our heads that's always active, going blah, 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 starts to calm down a little bit, right? So we need to direct our attention and intention in ways that isn't just about trying to get somewhere. So the conversation always comes back to the same place. I always ask the question when someone says, well, I'm feeling anxious. Who is feeling anxious? Who is I? Who is that? Right? And nobody can ever answer the question. Well, it's me. Well, no, it isn't. Because if I'm sitting here right now, where do you see me?
I see you there.
Okay. Do you really, though? Because the light's reflecting, you're a lighting guy, reflecting off of me.
Well, you are just light.
Right? The light's reflecting.
You are light. Like what's coming at me is light.
Yeah, which is and in a lot of the new age.
You can get crazy with that sort of stuff.
Well, that stuff, but if we look at it from this perspective, the light is reflecting off of my body in through your lens, into your retina, and you see me within you.
Sure.
And you hear me within you. You close your eyes right now, well, you'll still be able to see me, right, to a degree, because you just saw me. Yeah. But take away your ability to hear and your ability to see, you don't see or hear anything. So all is happening within you. Who should determine the outcome?
You?
You, of course. And if you don't, almost anybody will.
Someone else will determine the outcome for you.
For sure. If you, life is happening within you. Something happens, your marriage ends, you lose your job, this happens. Or to the contrast, something really beautiful happens, you win the lottery or something like that. All is the same value. Those images or those experiences in your life, the way in which we perceive them is what identifies them as being a good experience or a bad experience. But what's left after those experiences is you, and you're responsible for now how your life unfolds. When I really understood that okay, the world and life is chaotic. You got 7.5 billion people. The primary function of the mind is to make itself feel better than what it normally feels. So what do you have? You have a mismatch of just people existing in their minds trying to make themselves feel better, right? And how do we normally do that? Well, what's quickest? You go out and whatever your thing is, your vice, your social media, watching TV, Netflix, having a beer, eating this, whatever that is. But all of these things that are going on out there is happening within you. And you are the only person that can determine the outcome of your relationship to those things. Life is always going to happen. It's good. There's going to be chaos. There's going to be things taking place. Your relationship to it is what dictates the outcome, not the other way around. So if all of life is happening within you, and you're the one that should determine the outcome, and if you don't, then almost anyone will. And that's where we fall into seeing the way in which
people get manipulated.
Exactly. And that's, the propaganda. It's interesting. I do a lot of reading in that, and you look back into, and this would probably strike a nerve with some people, but you look at back in the 1940s in Nazi Germany and the propaganda and the way things were functioning. It's no different right now in Canada and the United States. I'm not talking about the genocide in that, but the way that we're being inundated. It's amazing. I'll look at something online, and next thing you know, I log into Facebook, and there's an ad for that thing that I just looked online on somebody.
Yeah, it's funny. I read a book that you'll get a kick out of this one. I read a book by what was his name? It was a memoirs of the my memory's going. Luke, my memory's going. I got to get to that space so I can recall it. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
He was in charge of foreign armies east for the German army in the Second World War. And what he was responsible for intelligence. So he set up an intelligence network into Russia and all this sort of stuff. And this is in the 40s, and then he was backed by the CIA after the war in Western Germany. And the information they were able to get before they had cell phones and all this stuff, Luke.
Yeah.
Like the information they had on people and what was going on. Can you imagine what they have now?
Oh, there was a letter written back in the 1800s from a 33 degree Freemason in Europe to another one in a part of Europe, basically laying out the next 100 years, all 3 world wars, exactly how it was going to function. You know, and it's and if we look at the way that the planet functions, and if you think that there's, you know, these powers that be that are highly successful, tons of money, that gather on a regular basis and run the whole planet like a corporation, and that's essentially what it is. That's what we're experiencing right now, and thank you to them because they're probably listening. But it's again, our salvation comes back to the basics. We have to stop trying.
It doesn't matter about any of that.
Yeah, none of that matters because the people that are doing those things are doing what they feel is necessary for them to live a beautiful life. One of the greatest gifts in my life also has been to really accept the way in which people choose to have their experience. So who am I to say how you want to live your life, right? I have to respect the way in which you choose to have your experience, even if you're, I don't know, cutting me off when I'm driving home. Even if you're yelling and screaming at me, telling me I'm this, telling me I'm that. I have to respect your choice and how you choose to live your life, but then I have the ability to choose whether I want to be part of it or not, right? And we spend so much time trying to control the way in which others function. I mean, we don't love one another because we don't love ourselves.
But I think that's the beautiful part of living in the West is that freedom. We got that right.
Yep.
That ability to, you know, freedom of association.
Yeah.
You know, not having to join some stupid thing like in, you know, in another country that, you know, where the government. It's even worse in countries like China and North Korea, where they basically all live in prison. Everybody in the country, so that we got right. But yeah, wow.
Well, I would even argue that we're imprisoned. We just don't see the bars.
Oh,
what do we do?
This is why I love you, buddy.
What do we do? We get up and we go to our job and we go to our favorite restaurant and we go to our friend's house and we go to this place and we have this reality that we perceive as freedom, but we're not free from anything because we're not free from the constraints and the confines of the mind and the suffering. Right? So we see because we exist in a way where we do things that we don't like doing to continue doing things that we don't like doing so that we can consume massive amounts of stuff
that we don't need.
Right? We can have a bigger house, a nicer car. We can go eat this. We can go do that.
Go here, fly here.
All of this stuff, which causes us to perceive that we're living a beautiful life or a good life. But
you're not against travel or
no, of course I'm not against anything. It's
why you're doing it.
I just think that we need to do everything from our heart,
right,
as opposed to our brain. And that phrase is thrown around a lot. But there's a space within our heart, as we call it, the tiny space of the heart. There's only about 5 or 6 books in the history of humanity ever written about this sacred space, and it's a place that we can go into. So living from that place, living from our heart, I mean, we need to do everything from there. You know, so you want to have a glass of wine, have one, but have it from your heart.
Sure.
If you have 10, I would argue that they're probably not
from your heart.
Not from your heart, right? But you know, we get so caught up in who we are and who we are not, and I'm this and I'm that and that. We just need to stop it all.
Sure.
Just stop it and let go of it. We have to be willing to allow who we think we are to completely disappear. And that's a very difficult thing for people. You think about it. You went to university.
Your ego.
You went and did your master's degree. You did all these things, and now you've got this profession, and it's attached.
Luke Sellars, all tattooed up with his green shirt, is telling you to forget about all that.
and it's hard, right? Because it's our identity, right? And you know, from 0 to 6 years of age, roughly, we are our essence, pure unconditional love. During that period of time, society, our family, is you know, bombarding us with who they think we need to be to survive in this world. And then we develop, and that's when, you know, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years of age, the unconscious is running on a loop. You know, 95 to 98% of your being here and awake is unconscious. We think that we're making conscious decisions. It's not the case. We're a computer that's running in a way that it knows how to, just like a Mac runs or a
So you're saying there's no free will?
Oh, there is definitely free will.
Okay.
I think the thing is that people aren't able to access it properly.
Interesting.
If we look at the human ego, the best way it's been explained to me is that if you think of like one of these oil tanker ships or these cargo ships going from continent to continent, and that represents the human ego. And the captain of that ship is human willpower. Now, imagine there's a pilot flying around way up in the sky that can see much further in any direction. We'll call that the higher self, right? So your direct connection to spirit or God, or, you know, when you're there and you're in that state at the end of a yoga class where it's just, there's nothing. There's nothing there. There's nothing there. None of you is there anymore.
Yeah, you can observe things,
exactly.
but they're not you.
So when the captain of the ship, the human willpower, is connected with the higher self, the pilot, the ship goes where we choose for it to.
Sure.
When they're not connected, it goes wherever it wants to.
Sure.
And that's the issue that's going on, is people are not connected in to who they are. They're not connected into who they are in higher levels of consciousness in the cosmos, and you know, and they're lacking direction, because their willpower is not dialed in and not attuned. And then you get into the physiology of where the willpower resides in the brain and the nutrients that you need to access it, and you look at the way that most
it's a muscle, man. You have to build it up too.
For sure, right? It's you know, the willpower exists in the neocortex, the front part of the brain. It runs on fats.
Sure.
Right? You don't get good healthy fats in your system early in the day, your willpower will burn out by 11, 12 o'clock. Now you're functioning in the limbic system, which runs on sugars, which is the way that most of the population is. People, you know.
What's your diet like? What do you
eat? Me, it's gradually shifted over time. I believe that the way in which we eat is an extension of our consciousness, not the other way around. And that's something I you know, advocate a lot, because in this city right now, you know, I'm a vegan, I'm a vegetarian, and these things,
carnivore,
right? And people and it's
I'm keto.
It's a big thing, and it's like, and I ask people, why do you want more labels? Your name is already too much of a label, right? So we eat, we eat.
It's just another label.
It's it. So I'm this, I'm that.
I'm a carnivore diet. I'm a vegan. I'm gonna get this label so it comes with some sort of social recognition with it.
Exactly. It's crazy.
Yes.
So eat,
I totally get that.
what you feel
so
you need
smart,
to
dude.
eat.
Yeah.
But do things in your life so that your relationship to food is not one that is a vice. Right, and you look at the foods now. I mean, wheat specifically, it's not even food; it's a chemical. Binds to receptors in the brain the same way heroin, synthetic opiates, and nicotine does. Right, and that's what people are consuming a lot of. Cheese. People consume massive amounts of cheese. It's a mold, causes mucus and all kinds of congestion throughout the physical body. So the thing is that physiologically speaking, people don't have the raw materials in their diet to make them feel the way that they need to be able to go out and now start exploring the things that allow them to understand who they are and deliver them to themselves. So we're always chasing something. They did a study on rats where they created an environment, a synthetic environment that was similar to a person sitting in on a 10th floor of a corporation at a computer all day long. And all that rat did inside it was just eat all day long. Because innately inside of us, we know we need energy.
Sure.
And we're not getting the energy from Mother Earth because we're not connected to her. We're not breathing. I mean, the source of life is your breath, right?
Sure.
So we breathe up in our upper chest, and we're not breathing rhythmically and diaphragmatically in the way that we need to. So what do? We eat. And then, I mean, you factor in, you know, all the companies that are trying to sell you that food. It's a mess. It's an absolute mess, but one that can be transcended if we step back and accept life and start to understand the inner workings on how it functions. Most people are stepping onto the playing field of life in the equivalent of wearing hockey equipment on a football field.
Okay.
And can't figure out why life isn't working out for them.
Sure.
Right? You know, so, and it's not at the forefront. It's not at the type of stuff that we're speaking about here. You know, a lot of people, it's hoopla, meditation, all this kind of stuff. You know, it's which is okay too.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's everything is okay. Everything's beautiful.
Sure.
You want to do this, do that. You want to do something else, then do that. But understand that you have a choice, and that choice exists within you, and you can move away or pull away the filter that's causing you to perceive things in a certain way. But the only way to do that is to step back, slow down, and stop. Stop all of the distraction. Spend some time with yourself. Just give yourself that gift. Doesn't mean that you need to know how to do any kind of spiritual practice. Get up in the morning and put your shoes on and go for a walk. Your body's been laying dormant for 10 hours, 8 hours, however long you sleep for. What do you think it wants to do? It doesn't want to start looking at a cell phone. That's what people do. They get
You know, it's so weird. I was like last night, I was a little bit upset about something, so I couldn't sleep. and I have a BlackBerry. Okay,
Yeah.
so I'm still
Really?
in the old 80s,
yeah.
right? So when I get home, I rarely look at it. I picked it up off the table, and I looked at it. I got out of my bed and picked it up off the table, and it was so bright, dude.
Yeah.
I was like, boom, in my eyes in the middle of the night. I was like, whoa, that's bright. I got to turn down the brightness.
Yeah.
So I went to the brightness screen. It was already on the lowest level.
Yeah.
And I thought, holy mackerel, some people are looking at their phones at night on these super bright screens, dude.
Yeah. And when what comes off of that screen is what's called blue light, which
Messing with your circadian photobiology.
Yeah, exactly. Melatonin production, pineolin.
Telling you to wake up. It's noonday.
Well, that's just it, right? So people get up in the morning, and the first thing they do is they turn to the TV, the computer, or their phone, which causes an endorphin release in the brain, which is stimulation. So if that's the first thing you're doing in the morning, that's taking place for the practices and the things that you actually need to be doing, which is just spending time with you. Get to know yourself. Become friends with yourself. Right? We talk about loneliness. Transition that. Transcend what loneliness looks like. Go into it. Understand and experience what it is to just be there with you, with no distraction, no nothing. And in that space, I ask the question over and over again, is there any suffering? There isn't.
Not when you're there, no.
There isn't.
I would say no. I would say that I'm an advocate for what you're talking about.
Yeah,
for sure.
and this ain't hoopla. Anybody can do this.
Sure.
Anybody.
Kids can do it too.
Of course they can. They do it better, actually, because they don't have the ego so developed in that. I mean, I love where I was with a 9-year-old earlier in the week down by the water in Pickering, sitting there, and we're doing a meditation together, and it's kids pick things up so quickly, and they listen.
I bet.
And they listen.
Especially a guy like you.
Right? And they listen. As opposed to adults have an idea about why it should be a different way or this way or that way. I mean, it's but it's we got to enjoy all of it. I really.
I think I get that from you. It's like you see all of it as part of whatever this is.
What's part of the whole? If you remove any aspect of it, if you remove any aspect of the suffering that you've had in your life, because that's what people can relate to most. Isn't it interesting that you can sit down with a person and start talking about your suffering and relate to one another immediately,
Sure.
but we don't ever sit down and start talking about the blissfulness and the happiness in our life.
Yeah, you don't sit down with a guy and say, I'm really happy to be a father. I'm real blessed by my 4 children. And he says, I have 2, and I have 2 twins, and I really
imagine.
It's always like the damn stock market crashed, and it's raining outside.
Exactly,
you're right.
And
so true.
And really, my only commitment is in this life is, and you could even call it selfish, is that I would love in this lifetime to be able to walk down Yonge Street in Toronto, and see that glow on adults' faces that you see on children.
Yeah, sure.
Imagine that's the only interest that I have. The rest of it, the acts and the games in which I partake in my life are just that. And I don't mean it in an inauthentic way, but the only duty that I have is that commitment to myself for me every morning, which is a few hours, and then I go out and explore the world and accept it for as it is. Right, I had the conversation with a kid recently we were talking about this, and he plays video games a lot, which is a whole nother topic. I said, do you play the same level over and over again? Well, of course not. So then why would you want life to be the same day in, day out?
Exactly.
If you knew what it was going to look like, you wouldn't want to live it. But yet then we resist the adventure of what life looks like.
That would help. That's a good way to put for that kid,
Yeah, it hit home with him. It's
How old is he?
we resist 12, I think 12. So we resist that which we are, and that's
to our detriment.
And that's wherein lies our suffering.
Yeah, resisting who we are, what we are.
Yeah, who we are, what we are. Anyway,
and therein lies the suffering.
And therein lies the suffering. Right. So we have an idea about ourselves that is not us.
What about karma?
I mean,
because what you're talking about, see, like, I haven't seen any space for karma on what you're talking about.
Well, karmic debt and profit is prevalent, and more so in masculine energy. December 21st, 2012 was the end of the Mayan calendar, which essentially it was the end of a 13,000-year cycle. It's called the precession of the equinox. It's all science, what I'm speaking to. We shifted into the southern galactic hemisphere of the Milky Way galaxy, and we are now in pure feminine energy. So if you look at the way that the world has functioned for the last, however long, business is the easiest way to look at it. It's masculine. analytical, logical. How do we get from here to there?
How do we build this building?
Exactly, right? And grow this in an incremental way. And, you put your nose to the grindstone and this and that. But in December 21st, 2012, we shifted into a corridor, which we are now in pure feminine energy. So in masculine energy, karmic debt and profit is prevalent. In feminine energy, we're in a paradox, as us men can attest to, and I don't mean this in a way that's...
How dare you generalize about men, Luke
and
Sellars?
I don't mean this in a way, but I don't know why I get a good laugh out of it. But look at women. It's a paradox. What's right now can be wrong in a second.
Oh, this podcast, I hope nobody listens through this.
Now the other side of it is that the feminine energy is very nurturing, very creative, and very loving. And it's exactly what the population and humanity needs to deliver us back to ourselves. If you look at the 7,000 or 8,000 ascended masters that have walked on this planet, most of them are men. Because a man will learn a system, go off into the bush, work that system, and then go on, wherever it takes him. A woman will, or the feminine energy will take the entire community with them. So we actually are in a very beautiful, beautiful time. People don't understand the magnificence and the magnitude of what it is to be born in masculine energy and to die in feminine energy. Our generation. It's a 26,000 year cycle. And we were born in one side of it and going to die in the other. And in the feminine energy, this is what is bringing us back to ours. It's why you're seeing so much on the planet now in relationship to love and compassion and togetherness, and companies that are progressive and in honoring their employees and working with one another, as opposed to the hierarchy and top-down approach to business. So we are going home. How long is it going to take? Who knows, right? The only way that you can ensure that it's smooth for you is, again, comes back to the same thing. Show up for yourself, whatever that is. Sit in your backyard for 10 minutes tomorrow morning with your feet on the earth. Let the sun hit your retina, right? And then go start your day. 5 seconds tomorrow, more than today, is a monumental quantum leap in the direction of your soul and the evolution of your soul. We don't need to become spiritual jocks. We don't need to identify and try to attach on to I'm this, I'm that. We don't need a guru. We don't need an ashram, a monastery. All we need is Mother Earth, Father, Son, and ourselves. And the intensity, as you spoke to before, the intensity of consistency.
Yes.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does, totally.
It's not the velocity of anything. It's the consistency.
That's what momentum is.
Exactly, right? And I think in that space, when we start to show up for ourselves, we plant the seed of inspiration, which flourishes like a beautiful flower in the spring. Motivation always needs an exterior force, right? And there's a lot going on the planet right now with motivational speakers and this and all these different things. And I'm always pretty on point in the way that I think I see things with this, is that we need to become inspired, not motivated, right? We need to live from within ourselves and then come at life from there. And now things start to make sense because you accept it. You can't have life without one part of it. I'm not here sitting here with you. I wouldn't have had the beautiful opportunity of meeting you in the way that I did it at the health club that I was working at before, which I really, really value and hold these types of friendships.
Everyone misses you, man.
Yeah, no, but I really, yeah, and I met, a lot of good people I met there, but like this interaction right now is the only thing in my life that it's the only thing that's happening and the only thing that means anything to me right now.
You're present here.
And I take that as a massive privilege to be able to be part of people's lives in whatever capacity that may look like, right? To be able to be here with you, take away all the cameras and the microphones.
Yeah, we would have done the same thing.
Exactly. We have done it for years.
Yeah,
years, right? It's a privilege for me to sit here with you, to be able to share space with you, and for you to see that who I am is important enough to take time out of your life to spend time with me.
Yeah.
And I think when we start looking at our relationships in that way and see that it's a privilege to be part of that person's life.
Yes, for sure.
And stop taking it for granted. The interesting thing
hate evaporates with that.
Well, the interesting thing in way in which we love is we want for that person what we want for them. That's us loving ourselves through them.
Yeah.
When you want for that other individual what they want for themselves, now you're loving them absolutely.
For sure.
Now you're loving them unconditionally. Now you have a starting point to be able to heal what's going on within you, to be able to forgive yourself for your attachment to all of the things in your life that have continued to lead you astray and keep you existing in a state that really is not who you are. We get into this, you can go deep down this rabbit hole, right?
We always went down rabbit holes. That's what we did.
Yeah, I know, right? And we can get lost in it too, because what we're speaking to is heart intelligence and trying to understand it psychologically.
Well, I think for me, when I met you, I was doing some of these things, and then you sort of gave it a theme where it's like, yeah, those things are good, and that's where you're, like when you told me about the yoga experience, it's like that's real, So, do you know that we did almost 2 hours?
Holy Christ, man! I knew it. I figured it was quite some time. The interesting thing about it, when you're in this type of space, right? Time is spherical or vertical, so you literally 5 minutes seems like 2 or 3 hours, right? So
yeah, like all those, you know what's interesting is like all those words we said evaporated into the universe. You know what I mean? But they're recorded, but they were in this room, and they meant something to us, and it was important that we had to meet. I think it was time.
All is appearing and disappearing, right? But yet, when it's appearing in our lives, we attach onto it. We attach onto the suffering and sadness and whatever it may be. But then it goes on its way. And if I were to ask you, you had a rough day yesterday, were you that day? Were you that emotion?
Yeah.
Well, you identified with it in the moment, but it's not you.
No, it's not you.
It's not you. So all in the physical reality is phenomena, and it's appearing and disappearing. So why try to attach onto it? Why try to hold onto it? Why try to suppress it? Just let it flow. It's like standing in a river, or standing outside on a beautiful sunny day. The sun's blowing, well, not through our hair because we don't have any, but the sun. Yeah, I like your look, brother. So the air is flowing. You don't try to stop the air. Why do we try to stop life?
Yeah, sure.
Why do we try to control it?
Totally.
Right.
Thank you, Luke Sellars.
No, brother. Thank you, man. It's a blessing to have you in my life, a friendship, and thank you to Matt there, who's works so diligently and really was so amazing with just getting me in here and on point with everything. So I really, really appreciate your friendship, and hopefully the people listening got something out of this. But above all else, just show up for you. Show up for you. Spend some time with yourself every morning, and after a month or two, then take a look at your life and see where it's at. But until you can do that, stop trying to fix everything.
Thank you, Luke Sellars.
Yeah, man. Thank you.
GetAGripStudios.com, blessed by Luke Sellars. That's right. Luke blessed the studio, and now it's ready for you to come in and create your own content. That's right. You ever thought about starting a podcast? Are you 41 years old like me? You don't understand how all this stuff works? I don't care if you're 25. There's a lot of work in starting a podcast, especially if you want to do it right. Like if you're going to take yourself, like, hey, if you want to download an app and fart into a microphone, sure, do whatever you want. Put it on YouTube or whatever and start your own YouTube channel. But if you want to be serious, like if you have a serious message that you need to get out there to people and you need help with that, Get a Grip Studios is here for you. You know why it is here for you? Because I struggled for 2.5 years to get my own podcast off the ground. And 1.5 years, 2 years later, I started learning and figuring everything out. And now I'm going to give it to you for as little as $200. That's right. $200, come try out an episode, or you can do a full-blown strategic blast at whatever industry or part of the world that you think your message is important. All you have to worry about is your message. All you have to worry about is recording with GetAGripStudios.com. So that's that. I'd like to thank Luke Sellars, man. He's a special guy. And you know what? Him and I are going to do some work together over the next couple months. And I'm going to release those shows as well about how to gain some spirituality, how to find peace in your life, how to get to that place where you have less conflict, where you're succeeding more, where things become clearer, how to make decisions. He always talks about that eye of the hurricane. Very, very special guy. Can never get out of the hurricane. People say, rise above the storm. Yeah, I mean, maybe. First got to get to the eye, though. And his message is very, very pertinent, especially nowadays when people are so confused. They need some spiritual guidance. They think it doesn't matter. It matters. Luke Sellars, thank you for coming on my show. This is episode number 5 of the Get a Grip on Life podcast.